Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Munoz, CEO of the experience agency D-Flash. Each week on the Reset Podcast, I bring on an interesting business leader who's doing some game-changing work. And this week's episode is no different. I am super pleased to have on the show Tim Smith, president of the agency Chemistry. And we're going to talk about where he came from, what he does, and how awesome he's been able to change the game. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Every time we have this in the show, we always ask the same very first question. And that question always interesting stories, memories, and it's also interesting how it tracks back to what people currently do now. And I bet you're going to be no different. So Tim, what was your first job?
So my first actual job was working in a seafood buffet as a dishwasher. So it was quite a crazy experience. It was very motivating to not do that. So it was out on a lake, and it was basically a Saturday night buffet. So you had all the rednecks come off the lake and pay, $2 for all you can eat.
$2? Where?
I don't know. I don't know how much it was. I just know that they went nuts on that. They were going to get their money's worth if it killed them. So they would do a lot of plates, and it was a lot of washing. So it was challenging. It was a wake up.
That's awesome. And how old were you?
So I was 16. As soon as I got my license, I could drive. And I found the job, but it was completely across town. It was like 45 minutes away from my house. And I would go. And so on Saturday night was the worst night because that was the big buffet night. And I would get off at like 12 o'clock midnight or 1 o'clock. Because they'd have dancing and stuff afterwards. And then I'd drive 45 minutes home, and then I'd have to be back up for the Sunday buffet. I'd have to vacuum all the carpets and stuff. So I'd be back up like 6 o'clock the next morning, and it was killing me. As a kid, I'd fall asleep on the way home almost. It was a little intense on the weekends. It was a back-to-back that hurt pretty bad.
Oh my gosh. And at 16, all you want to do is have a good time and party. And you're like,
That's right.
You're washing dishes and vacuuming away. Oh my gosh.
I got a little fun in, but it was it was a rough summer.
And where was this?
One side of Chattanooga in Ooltewah, Tennessee, and the lake was on the other side of Chattanooga in Hickson, Tennessee. So, but yeah, it was a good haul. But it's close to Chattanooga, but I'd basically cross. It would be a part of town that I'd never go to unless I had to go to work. I mean, exactly. Just in terms, it was too far to me to drive. It wasn't my bubble, so.
Got it. Well, I'm sure that taught you patience, conflict resolution, and how to make the best out of crazy situations.
That's true.
So I'm sure that probably led you to what you do now, which is.
So my job now is basically taking care of the business, I guess, custodian of the business, which really for me means that trying to build it and take care of the people who work here at Chemistry. And that means a few things. One, it means making sure we keep the business and get new business and grow. And another thing is, making sure that they're happy, doing what they're doing, that provide the resources that we need to do for them to do their job, that sort of thing. Certainly part of my job is to keep our clients happy, but my belief is if I sort of keep our chemistry people happy, then hire the right people, they'll do that as part of their job. So really for me, it's more about keeping chemistry alive and well and curious and growing and keep the fire burning.
Awesome. And how did you end up becoming the caretaker?
One more time.
Of chemistry?
Ask one more time.
So how did you end up in chemistry? Like what was the story from going from Chattanooga all the way?
Yeah. Well, I had the somewhat of a usual path, I guess, in a way, but I started out after school, went to University of Tennessee, went to Portfolio Center. I basically looked in a book at some point when I graduated college, and I wanted to be an artist, but I was figured that didn't pay as well, and I got my mom had got me one of those books that talks about careers, and the book basically said, in advertising, you can be creative and make money. So I pursued that path. I went to, I saw a speech, and this guy mentioned Portfolio Center. I went there. And then after my first job out of school was at BBDO New York. So I got to jump in sort of the deep end very quickly. I got into a group that was a good core starting group. One of the guys had just been promoted there to have a group, and there was some good folks put into that.
What a culture shock from Tennessee to New York in advertising.
It was, and it was early '90s. So the world was a wonderful advertising wonderland of fancy hotels and private planes and budgets that were ridiculous. And I just was like, wow, this is the greatest job on earth. This advertising gig is phenomenal. This is fantastic.
It's never going to end.
Never going to end. This is great. So I just rode that out. And then, obviously it changed a bit through the years, but I had a great time. I got some pretty good notice because as a kid, really one of the big first things is we pitched M&M Mars, and my partner and I's concept won the pitch, and the concept was really not that creative, which was to take the product and make it talk, which was the M&M characters as you know them today. But the whole kind of take on it was that everybody is always trying to eat the M&M characters, which is what they wanted. Everybody, they really loved the idea that the quest for their product was always happening. So we came up with lots of creative ways to kind of hijinks and stuff for the folks trying to eat M&Ms, and that's sort of kind of
awesome.
goes on today. Yeah, it's sort of, they kind of keep the theme today. They veer off it a little bit, but in the most part, you'll see it come back. And then they've done, of course, we did red, yellow, and blue. Blue was sort of the assignment, but they've created all sorts of colors and personalities and stuff since then. And I worked with a great group of people, and it was great. And I got to do a few different categories of hospitality and other food stuff, and big brand, the way it's supposed to be kind of stuff. And you were able just to use your creativity it was such a TV driven shop. It was just about cranking out scripts and being as creative as you could. And I loved it. I really did love it. And, digital was just actually coming in to town. I mean, I remember seeing Razorfish, which got much bigger later, down the street that I'd pass on the way to the subway, and they had like a banner, like a homemade banner that they hung outside the door. I was like, oh, I wonder what those guys are. But the whole, literally I remember when I started, I tell the story to the kids now, man. Like I remember when I first started, the art directors were so mad because that FedEx had started running, and you basically boarded up your concepts and put them in FedEx overnight, and you'd get comments the very next day. And they were so like, we don't have time to do anything. We just finished this, and the comments already came back from the client the next day.
Wow.
Yeah, they were mad. So obviously the pace is quickened, but it was a great experience. And I left there and tried to make it back south, went to a big independent known as 22 Squared now. Had met some great people there, worked on some great brands there, jumped out of there, went for a long, cold summer out to Chiat Day in San Francisco because I was trying to get a job at Goodby. And when I was in the middle of that, I got a call from DDB Chicago working on Budweiser, which I thought, oh, this is going to be amazing dream job. So I got to work on Budweiser and McDonald's, and it was for the most part, I was working on Bud Light, and it was for the most part an amazing experience. It was one of the harder jobs I've ever had in my life because there's just no true product benefit. It's basically just come up with something funny, which you would think is a dream assignment until it's just, hey, write something funny. Yeah, it's incredibly hard. You have nothing to like build on or strategy or any of that stuff. So it proved hard, but I got some good stuff out of it and had some successes there. But I was still trying to get back south, and we had a baby while we were in Chicago, so I had to kind of decide quit moving around the country and decide on something. And went to Atlanta to a smaller shop as creative director. There was a guy there that was a really talented writer, and he basically was on his way out when I was on the way in. And he left and started freelancing and sent me a literal letter in the mail that was a typed plan of how to start a business. It was just to say, we're going to do this. You should leave because I'm sure you're unhappy, and we'll do this for 6 months. If we don't get any clients, we'll quit, etc. And I was like, okay, I'm in. So we stopped. We went and grabbed a closet type of office down in part of the town here and put our names, our very creative names, Breen Smith, put them together for the name, and it started working. And we built it up and took it through 10 years and ended up getting Small Agency of the Year, and we were kind of cranking along. And then Chemistry, people were definitely calling at that point, which was kind of nice. But there's a agency in Pittsburgh called Chemistry, and they did enterprise websites, and they did media buying and planning, which was great because we were outsourcing both of those. We were still small, and they really we felt like could use our creative injection, and there wouldn't be too much of a conflict. They kind of saw things the way we did. We liked the guys, and so 2.5 years ago, we did the deal on that, and we've been building the awareness of Chemistry, at least in the Southeast, because there just wasn't any around because they were originally a Pittsburgh entity, and now we've got Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and a small Nashville agency. So we're growing a little bit through acquisition, looking at different stuff all the time, trying to figure out the best next thing. And we're now a full service shop that sort of the dreaded full service title, but we do cover pretty much everything. We're what I'd call a traditional agency that's digital based. So
very cool. So it's interesting because you've been at the epicenter of such drastic change in our industry, because you go from doing commercials to all things, and that to be sort of now being a digitally native shop. What was that push and pull like? Because I know when I started, and funnily enough, I have an M&M's connection too. My first job in advertising was working on the character creator for M&M's. And not only making them talk, but then making the mugs and the cups and the scarves, which probably would have been about probably 12, 15 years after you were first making them talk. So see how tight it was.
No, it was funny. We wanted to work with the agency that had done the California Raisins in order to create the actual. We were going to do them out of claymation because
awesome.
And we love the texture, like you say, and all that kind of stuff. And so we went out and got Will Venton, who had done in Portland, who had done the California Raisins. And they came back to us and said, listen, we've got this plan, and, it's a little shaky, but you got to trust us on it. We think that we can create them in the computer digitally and actually, have the texture and all that stuff. But if we get it going, it's going to be much easier to do, moving forward. We can make changes and that kind of stuff. We're like, I don't know. We're sort of looking for the claymation thing, but I don't know. We did some tests and stuff, and it was like, yeah, it does look pretty organic, and it really did. And a lot of that smoothed out and stuff now, but and obviously they can crank them out much easier. But that's how far it's come, and I have certainly seen the change, and it's hard to get your mind around it. Really, just the amount of channels, especially coming through, the BBDO empire where TV is king. To say, you can use channels to tell a story anywhere and in a much more cost efficient way, because the technology, even if you're doing video, has gotten so advanced. You can make these beautiful shots now out of very viable ways and technology. And, they're cutting them up here on their laptop instead of spending a week in LA with nice lunches at the Edit House.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because, everything has just gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. Like, I remember worked on the Character Creator, and then the next thing we worked on was this, these mini flash movies for Snickers. And I remember we had a tweener, we had a graphic designer, we had a flash animator, all to do that stuff.
Right.
And yesterday, for one of my clients, I don't touch video ever because that's not my neck of the woods, but I made their presentation video in iMovie in about 20 minutes with animations, with music.
Right.
It's faster for me to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, how has this changed in 10 years? But someone like me, who's biz dev and not a creative, can make something that my client approves and goes, yeah.
Right.
So it's definitely, the window of everything has just changed so much. How are you able to adapt to that and not feel like you're falling behind?
Yeah, I think everybody struggles with it. I struggled with a while, just the fact that, the folks who were saying we're a digital shop seem to have been getting all the business, and we're over here doing the digital stuff, and we're saying we're an ad agency. And I was like, wait, we're doing the same thing. So how come we've started promoting that more, but for us, it's really about hiring the right people and just going to the conferences, making sure that you're understanding, also keeping up with all the name changes, like experiential, which used to be guerrilla marketing. And it's like, wait, that's the same thing, So just making sure that we're up on all the lingo and breaking it down to simplicity. I mean, a lot of the, the more things change, the more they stay the same in a lot of ways. You still got to tell a simple story, whether it's 6 seconds or an hour or 2 hours. So, but yeah, we're always, we struggle with it like everybody, but it's just a matter of keeping out there and trying to see the trends as they come in.
And do you guys think that you have a bit of an advantage because you're in Atlanta, you're not in New York? Because I know there's an agency on, every 10 feet here in New York.
Right.
Southeast, I would imagine that the market is different, but you can offer a different level of service to your clients as well.
We do. It's funny. I mean, there's literally everywhere, it feels like, an office every 10 feet. Here in Atlanta, I used to say that I would hear about a new agency every day. I started tracking it, and it was about right. And, everybody calls themselves an agency, whether they just do email or whether they're a video house or whether they do everything. So you're constantly hearing about new agencies. There's so many agencies here. It's ridiculous. And I just think that's the way it is now. I mean, it's just used to be, again, the big key players, and you couldn't do a lot of stuff because you were locked out with technology. You had to be able to afford different stuff. And now anybody can do it, to your point, anywhere. You can walk into a meeting and cut something on an iMovie and say, look at what we did. And so it's just easier to compete. But we try and break it up into, being a full service agency, we try and break it up into, not categories, but sort of groups, so that we have a video group here called Test Tube, and that's That's sort of, they create content, they shoot it here in the agency. We, get out quick, fast social stuff or different needs. We do some long format stuff. We got PR, which is sort of their own group. We got strategy, which is sort of their own group. And, I've noticed, going to the conferences, Havas will talk about, we won the Coca-Cola business because we created this small agency called XXX within the agency, and Coke loved that. And it's like, wow, so the big agencies are trying to be small, the small agencies are trying to be big. It's it's just a mishmash.
Like, can we live? It's just like and so for you guys, you have this cool advantage of being, in the Southeast, not having to deal with the madness that is New York.
Yep.
You have your craziness. What's been the one thing that you think that has made you guys set yourselves apart in terms of being able to over-deliver for your clients in a way that is authentic to what Chemistry is all about?
Well, I think this is a trend that's going to kind of keep. And we're almost like a traditional agency with digital and future chops. We believe in the basics. We're always preaching, simplicity and also curiosity and innovation. So you've got to still be able to tell the simple story. And to me, it's amazing with the folks now that are coming into the business. Susan Cradle tells a story about when she was worried. She'd worked at BBDO for 25 years, 30 years, a long time, and she was wanting to not jump around, but she talked to one of the new kids coming in there, and she was like, and he was like, "Now who's Phil Dusenberry?" And he didn't know who Phil Dusenberry was, and then she was like, "Wow, if they don't know coming into BBDO who that is, what impact am I making?" But my thing is, and I've had a kid here the other day who I was like talking about Crispin Porter, and he was like, "Is that a restaurant?" So,
God.
And that's a younger agency, and it's just some of the basics and the foundation. If you're going to be an architect, you'd think you'd know who built the Eiffel Tower, but a lot of people coming in don't think like that. They kind of have there's a new way to do it because there's been so much change and so much technology. I know the technology, and I know the practice of the game, so I'm good, and then they miss sort of the foundation of relationship building, of telling a story, of some of the stuff that really will always be a part of our business. So for us, we try and give that foundation and use their talent for and their new trends that they do know mixed in together. I think that's been a big part of why we've been successful.
Yeah, I think that's, you're hitting on something really key there because, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine last night, and she was talking about how these young folks who she was working with as a consultant didn't understand the value of going out to dinner with the client.
Right.
And she's like, what?
Right.
What are you doing?
It's amazing. It's truly amazing. It is. And that's the thing. And it's hard because you assume things because you've been in the business a while and you did it like this when you were a kid. When I was a kid in BBDO, I slept it's like classic stuff, sleeping at the agency, working for 2 days straight, all that stuff. And, we have people interviewing who are like, well, here are my optimal hours to work. And this is the way, it's the way I need to do it for you to get the most out of me. And it's like, you gotta mix that up and kind of take that in consideration because there's a whole generation like that. But at the same time, instill some old school ethics in it. So.
Yeah, I find I see more and more of it, and I'm just like, what? Who raised you kids? Like,
I know.
It's like I was born in the 80s, so I'm technically a later millennial, and I'm a horrified because I'm like, okay, one, respect people who are older than you because that's the way this world works.
Right.
And, like there's this huge shift about this ageism, which I find so super duper annoying.
Yeah.
It's like you have to talk to people who were successful in business when everything wasn't at your fingertips.
Yes.
Because if you don't, the fundamentals of business come from when you have to figure it out on your own and not being able to go to Google. Because that's what happens when you're doing things right. And that doesn't happen. It's not happening now. And I'm always curious to hear like other folks in the industry, like, how are you dealing with that and responding to that?
No, you do. You feel like the old man is like those darn kids, but there's a lot of help to be out there if you just look at it. I mean, there's, like you say, experience. There's nothing that substitutes experience.
And also understanding that, like, but we're all still in the people business. And I think that oftentimes it gets lost in a lot of this. It's like, you're building something for people to watch, whether it's on TV, online, or on their phone. And you got to remember that like what you're building is for actual people. And I think a lot of times when people are building these campaigns and you see these like massive fails, like how do they miss this level of cultural sensitivity? And it's like, because you're not thinking in like a global perspective. You're not thinking from grabbing from different experiences. It becomes so self-centered that you think it's only you who can make up this decision. And because you're the young person who they brought in to understand Gen Z, you can do everything.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. No, and we try and explain that, when you come to the table in these presentations to the client with these finished, beautiful comps, that, you're training the clients to say, oh, this is it, and this is what it looks like. If you come in more with sketches and mantras and sort of a more creative, sort of looser deal where you can actually see the idea and get them bought into the actual concept, then it can go a lot further because they get lost in this whole, shiny object and it may not see the concept at all if they're, and it may be hidden. So
what's one thing, now that, you've gone back and forth, you've been in a lot of different positions. What was the one thing you'd probably tell 25-year-old Tim now, looking back on what you've been able to accomplish?
Yeah, well, for one thing I would say is Google is not a stupid name. I thought it was a dumb name, so I invested in Yahoo instead.
Oh my, really?
Yeah, I was like, Google, no, that's dumb. It's a stupid name. I'll never make it. So they did. That's for sure. I think, for me, it's try and see the bigger picture. Lift your head up from what you're doing and meet, your clients. Get to know your clients and get to know the people that you work with. Not the people for me, I was in the creative department. I was art director. So not the people that you're working with on a daily basis, but the account exec who works, in the other group and stuff. Because as you know, like the relationships within the industry end up becoming super important. And I was, my job was to do a script, read the script, go to the meeting, make sure it's sold, go on production, make sure, there's a cool director and get a beautiful product out the end. And I think I would love to have said, lift your head a little bit, go, maybe you don't want to work on Bayer aspirin, but maybe you want to talk to the people who do, or the account people who do, or the media buying and what's that about, and just getting a better sense of the whole picture of it all would be great. And it's hard to do that when you're young because it's everything's right there in front of you and it's easy just to take step by step.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice, because I think that's the thing that it's probably been the reason that I've been able to be successful in my business is that, like, because I was always a nerdy kid, I'm friends of all the nerds in every department.
Right.
So it's like I was a project manager, so I made friends of the web developers. I made friends of the kind of emo creatives. I made friends of all the IT team.
Right.
And, and you never know where people end up. And I consistently am amazed where people end up. And then you see them on LinkedIn or you bump into them at an event. You're like, oh my gosh.
Absolutely. No, it is phenomenal how your relationships, I'm always telling the people, oh, I know this guy, I know that person. And oh gosh, it just, just one of those shops that I worked at has just so many layers of relationships. So, but yeah, that's what I'd say. Try and understand the big picture of everything, of what's going on, not just your job, and just meet people, because people help you.
Yeah, I think it comes down to us. We're in the people business.
We are, yeah.
It's like, and it's how we build our business. Like when you got that letter from your friend, what was the first thing that you were thinking? Like, why is he just sending me a letter?
Right. That was one thing. It came down to his paranoia that the boss was reading our emails, but
really? Wow.
Yeah, that's what he told me later. I have no idea if that's true, but that's what he was saying. But yeah, no, I thought that, for me, it was like, this is, if you want a sign about what you want to do, if you're asking for a sign, a letter in the mail is a pretty good one. So.
And when you guys were building it on your own, did you ever have a moment of like, what are we doing? Why did we do this? We can go back to our cushier jobs.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. That happened. It feels like that to me every time we lose a pitch. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we lost this to, we should have won because of this or that and the other. And this is a definitely roller coaster job. You're always, self-doubting and stuff, but it makes you better. It's good.
So for you, when you're walking into a new client, what's kind of going through your head? What are those like sort of key things where you're like, okay, I'm going to sell this dude or a woman, and here's how I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Well, I've sort of been, forced into, so to speak, the new business world, and because we didn't have any clients when we started, and I've come to really enjoy it now. It's one of my favorite parts, but there's definitely rules, I think, to it. One is a very important rule that you experience the product. If they say, we want to, hire you for this store, and, it's a retail chain, and it's, you better go over there and look through it, or, and if it's a service, you better try to buy that thing on the website or what it is, because it's amazing to me how many people walk into the room not knowing that and expecting the meeting to be, they're going to tell us what it is. And that's not what the meeting is, based on the second rule, which is you have to, the client, no matter what they say in the RFP or on the phone or whatever, they do not want to know what you do. They want to know what you are going to do for them. You have to talk about them and your plan for them. That is all that they are there for. So it's a classic mistake, and it's so hard to remember. You almost have to put it on your desk and like make sure every time, because that's one. And then building the relationship before you walk in, which I'm not good at. I am good at finding the jobs, and I'm good at the meeting, and I'm good at the work. But that's sort of, I found somebody that's a new business person that's really good at making the phone calls before and sending, the questions, getting me on the phone, talking, and really knowing at least your contact somebody there before you're walking in the room, because you've got some sort of relationship. It's just so different between walking in that and walking cold. So that's a big one. And then really, there's two other kind of important things I do. One is to make sure you do it 100%. We've done don't do we'll probably go after this. If we lose it, so be it. It's just a waste of time. You have to choose, put your flag in the ground and say, if we're going after this, we're going 100% and we're going to put all that we have into it. And lastly, which is the probably most common mistake, is don't adjust yourself to be what the client wants you to be in a new business pitch. If they're a healthcare client, if you're a very creative agency and they call up and they're a bank or some more conservative industry, don't pull together your work that's like the conservative work and try and prove to them that you can be what they want you to be. They're calling you for a reason. They want you. And more than that, if you walk out and you lose it, you're going to wonder, wow, what if we had done what we do? Would we have won it? And at least if you're who you are, you walk out and you lose it, you go, well, we were who we were. We told them who we were. They must have not been looking for us. So to me, that's a huge thing. And it's a hard thing to do because you want the business and you want to be what they want to be, but you got to be yourself, because in the end, that's going to affect your culture and everything else. So, and you can sleep better at night.
Well, yeah, I think it's so interesting that it's what you're talking about is authenticity, which is the most important in our business.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, companies will turn themselves into a pretzel because they think that's what they need to do in order for the clients to love them. And it's like they wouldn't knock on your door if they didn't already think that you were someone they wanted to work with.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't try and change who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's, it's for life, it's for business. It's like who you are is who you are.
Yep. And when we learned early on, I had a kind of a wake up call, and we got a call. We were still small and we really had no business working with this large healthcare that called us, but they did. And I was early on in the process, and I put together this conservative work that we did, and I sent it over and crossed my fingers and all that stuff. And they called me back and said, "What is this?" And I said, "Well, this is our work." And they said, "Well, where's the cat hooker?" We had done this ad that had a cat on it that looked like a hooker. It was for Keep Animals Off the Streets campaign.
Oh, my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it was a beautiful shot, but they'd seen it on our website. And I was like, oh, you want that work? I was pleasantly surprised, but it was sort of a punch in the mouth that was like, come on, be who you are, do what you do, because they've checked you out. That's why they're calling you.
Yeah, they're not trying to. If they wanted boring and conservative, they wouldn't have knocked on your door. And so for you guys, what's next for Chemistry? You guys are 2.5 years into the merge and rename. What do you guys do next?
Well, we sort of set a goal every year. We won the Small Agency of the Year Northeast last year, so we've won it 2 out of the last 3 years. That was our goal last year. We sort of we have a big goal to hit the A-list. We just got a Pacesetter Award, which is an Atlanta award, but it's fastest growing 100 companies here. We're happy to get on that list just to kind of validate that we are doing things right. But our next goal is to get on the A-list. But we're basically trying to build out, like I say, our sort of departments here. So each department has their own sort of goals, whether it's PR or our test tube, the video guys, or our strategy departments being built, and social, same stuff. So each one of them has it. For us, it's every agency in the world, their goal is to get the next big client, I think, and that's our general goal. But we want to be the best agency in the Southeast, and for Atlanta at least being known, and then Pittsburgh, we'd like to kind of claim it up and down the East Coast. We're looking at a couple of other areas to look into. I guess it's sort of some developing stuff that we're in talks with some folks on. So we may grow a little bit through acquisition, but we prefer to grow really just by our accolades and getting our name out there. And it's been nice lately. I mean, we've been hearing, I know Chemistry, which is nice because we built up Breen Smith for like 10 years, and we finally got to that place where you'd shake somebody's hand around town, or they'd say, "Oh, I know you guys." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great." And then we gave up our name. So it's good to quickly get back into the running on that. It's always great. But yeah, we're just trying to keep up with the trends like we talked with before, make sure that we're covering our clients' needs and trying to make them smarter, trying to make sure, they don't have time to kind of look up the road. They're busy doing their business. And so we're trying to be their telescope there, make sure they're covered there, make sure that their goals are met. We're big on data and goals and making, that's how you increase the business. So it's onward, forward every day in every way.
Awesome. That's an awesome way to end the conversation. Tim, thank you so much. It was such a delight to speak with you, and so amazing to see what you've been able to build in a pretty incredible career. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I really had fun.